Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 3 and we'll be presenting on the topic of existentialism.
I am Nur Anisa Salihah binti Naziri. My metric card number is 2418334.
My name is Nur Damir Fahana binti Darul Fazli. My metric card number 2412552.
My name is Siti Maliha Sofia binti Suhaimi. My metric number 2418466.
My name is Elisa Liana binti Mohammed. My metric number is 233200.
And my name is Yasmina Zahanis binti Muhammad Ridwan, and my metric number is 2419746.
Inshallah, the topic of existentialism will be further explained in detail in next segment of this video.
Hi, welcome back to the next segment, and we'll jump right into the introduction of existentialism. So what is existentialism? So existentialism is a fascinating philosophy that focuses on individual freedom and the search for meaning, basically. And existentialism originated in 20th century France, but it is deeply rooted in early thinkers like Søren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche. Its central idea is that life's meaning comes from personal lived experiences. Think of it as an inside-out perspective. You truly understand something only by experiencing it firsthand, not through external observation. This philosophy was developed further by thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, and Albert Camus, and others who emphasize the importance of living authentically and embracing the freedom to define your own purpose. And today, in this presentation, we'll explore more how this philosophy compares to the Islamic worldview, focusing on its principles, strengths, and limitations.
In simple terms, existentialism is a philosophical idea that focuses on individual freedom, choice, and responsibility. It teaches that life has no inherent meaning and is up to each person to create their own purpose through their own action and decision. The key ideas in existentialism include three ideas, which is the first one is freedom and responsibility. We are free to make our own decisions, but we must take responsibility for them. The second one is existence precedes essence. We are not born with a predetermined purpose. Instead, we create our meaning through our action. The third one is anxiety and absurdity. Life can feel meaningless and absurd, which can cause anxiety. But this realization can also lead to a more authentic way of living. Famous existentialist thinkers like Søren Kierkegaard, Friedrich Nietzsche, and also Martin Heidegger each contributed to each idea. The first one is Søren Kierkegaard, who was a Danish philosopher and lived from 1813 to 1855. Kierkegaard emphasized faith and individual choice. The reason he developed the ideology of existentialism is because personal struggle and religious upbringing, as he was influenced by his father's strong faith and emotional conflict. The second one is Friedrich Nietzsche. He was a German philosopher, poet known for his provocative idea on morality, religion, individualism, and the nature of existence. He lived from 1844 to 1900. Nietzsche challenged traditional morality as he believed and argued that traditional Christian morality suppressed human potential and encouraged weakness. The phrase "death of God" does not literally refer to the existence of God. Nietzsche was not claiming that God had died in a literal sense. The last one is Martin Heidegger. He was born in 1889 until 1976. Heidegger is primarily recognized for his contribution on existentialism, phenomenology, and his investigation into the essence of being seen. However, he did not see himself as part of the existentialist movement and did not introduce existentialism as a formal ideology. The change from theological study to philosophy is one of the reasons that led him to explore more about the existentialism, and he explored how we understand our own existence.
So first we have the core principle of existentialism, which is existence precedes essence, principle established by Jean-Paul Sartre, which contrasts with the traditional religious belief. While many religions suggest that humans are created by God with a predefined essence or purpose, but Sartre argues that there is no inherent meaning to human existence.
For him, humans are born without a predetermined essence, and it is through our actions and choices that we define who we are. Sartre famously stated, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." So that passage highlights the idea that the individuals are free to create their own identity. So next principle is the freedom and responsibility. Existentialists believe that radical freedom is to make our own choices. However, with this freedom comes with the burden of responsibility that we need to accept the consequences, the shortcomings of our action, of our choices. This responsibility is not always easy to bear, especially when our choices lead to challenges or hardship. But this is where existentialism invites us to embrace freedom, not as a burden, but as an opportunity to shape our own destination, our own future. So, personal freedom and responsibility lead us to the concept of essential anxiety or Ungs, a term that reflects the burden individuals might feel when defining themselves in the world without any predetermined essence. According to Sartre, we might experience anxiety as we confront the realization that we are fully responsible for creating meaning in our lives. So, this overwhelming, this precious sense of responsibility can make us feel lost or uncertain about our choices. But it's a natural part of human experience and it's a natural part of the existentialism. Okay, so next characteristics is about the absurd. So these characteristics was introduced by the Albert Camus, which arises from the conflict between humanity's search for meaning and the lack of inherent purpose in life. According to Albert Camus, it states that life has no meaning, but humans continuously seek it. That's why it derived the word the absurd from that act. Okay, so in his book, The Myth of Sisyphus, he suggested that Sisyphus, we can find meaning in our struggle, in our act through personal effort and perspective, even in this meaningless life. So there are two options given on how to confront the absurd, which are despair and giving up, and to embrace the absurd and continue living, creating meaning through choices and action. So absurd emphasize the second option, which is to embrace the absurd and continue living, creating meaning through choices and actions. Moreover, we do have subjectivity and personal experiences. In these characteristics, it states that meaning cannot be identified through universal truths or external validation, but is found through personal experiences. So this definition was defined by the Soren Kierkegaard. Okay, so similar to the Sisyphus story, meaning arises from individual struggle and subjective interpretation. Due to the story of the Sisyphus who was struggling to push the boulder repeatedly, from that it derived experiences, and from the struggle it derived the meaning, the purpose of his life. So another key aspect of this ideology is particularly addressed by the philosopher, which is Martin Heidegger. So he introduced the characteristics about alienation and isolation. So Heidegger coined the term being toward death to describe the conflict between individual freedom and the lack of inherent meaning in life. It is also stated that life is all limited and we will all face the death alone. So this existential reality often leads to feelings of alienation, or what you just say, being disconnected from others, not just from others but also be even from ourselves and the world around us. However, this connection is not necessarily negative. It can be seen as an opportunity for self-discovery and reflection, pushing us to confront who we truly are and what we value, to see, to identify what are our true colors. So, these characteristics closely related to the previous characteristics, which is alienation and isolation. So, this characteristics is about the authenticity. Authenticity can be seen that as an effect, as an opportunity that can be taken from the feeling of disconnected by the world. Okay, so authenticity is about living as a true self with the rejection of societal norms, and it's all about the personal values, personal interests, true desires and passions. Alienation and isolation often lead to authenticity, where individuals confront struggles and hardships to discover their true desires and passions. For example, when the individual uncomfortable with their current job and they started to think and they started to make their own choices and shift job to another job. The example that I can give to relate between alienation and isolation and authenticity. Last but not least, it is about the rejection of traditional authority. So existentialism rejects traditional authority. This includes moving away, a passive escape from inherited beliefs passed down through the generation to another generation, whether it is religious, societal, or governmental. Existentialists argue that traditional authorities impose predetermined purposes or values on individuals, which limits their ability to live authentically, which is to expand their own choices. So Paul Sartre, for example, emphasized that individuals should reject these external sources of authority and take full responsibility for creating their own purpose in life in order to obtain a meaningful life.
I will be presenting about the impact of existentialism ideology to the people. Existentialism as a philosophical and cultural movement has had a significant and enduring impact on individuals, societies, and various cultural activities around the world. Its emphasis on personal freedom, responsibility, meaning, and the human condition has influenced not only the individual's psychological development, but also social movements, literature, art, politics, and more. To begin with, one of the most significant impacts of existentialism on individuals is the notion of radical freedom. Existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre argue that Humans are condemned to be free, meaning that in the absence of a divine plan or objective moral order, individuals are responsible for defining their own values and choices. This can be both liberating and burdensome, as it places the full responsibility for one's life on the individuals. For instance, Sartre's concept of bad faith describes the way people deceive themselves into thinking they are controlled by external forces such as society, expectations, and other than recognizing their freedom to make choices. This insight can lead individuals to take more responsibility for their actions and to live more consciously and intentionally. Next, the impacts of existentialism on society are secularism and the decline of religious authority. As existentialism grew in influence, especially after the two world wars, it contributed to the rise of secularism and a decline in the dominance of religious authority in Western societies. Existentialist thinkers like Nietzsche, Sartre, and Camus question traditional religious beliefs and the idea of a divine or preordained meaning to life. This shift fostered a growing acceptance of atheism and agnosticism, as well as an emphasis on human-centered ethics and morality rather than divine command. Finally, these are some examples of how this ideology has manifested in different parts of the world. Existentialism has left a lasting mark on philosophical thought and intellectual culture globally. In universities and academic circles, it influenced various fields including psychology, literature, theology, and political theory. Existentialist ideas about freedom and alienation and meaning were central to the intellectual currents of existential psychology, humanism, and postmodernism.
I will present about the shortcomings and strengths from the ideology. Okay, existentialism is a philosophy primarily concerned with the freedom of the individual, authenticity in life, and subjective or free experience. The main proponents like Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, and Heidegger believes that life has no meaning and that this meaning is created by the individual. The philosophy liberates humanity to create their own meaning in life independent on society or religious doctrines. Existentialism has influenced many of the modern way of thinking with regard to psychology, literature, and art. But there are also criticisms against existentialism, so the possible leading of its nihilisms or the belief that life has no meaning. It's a legitimate concern. There is also the danger of moral relatives in which what is morally right or wrong. It's really a personal affair and thus erodes moral stability. The denial of the conventional religious attitude may alienate those who consider religions integral to their existence. Now, the major differences are noticed when perceiving the leading ideas of existentialism against the Islamic worldview. While in Islam, the meaning of life is predetermined through submissions to Allah, it cannot be self-made. But in more details, Islam believes in freedom within the framework of the will of God. But for existentialists, it is complete. Besides, Islam considers this as a passageway to life in the hereafter, while existentialism often regards this as a motivator to live authentically in the present. In a nutshell, existentialism is a doctrine that focuses on freedom and responsibility regarding human life and the meaning to be applied to it. Despite criticisms, its influence upon modern intellectual and artistic movement has been immense.
From all that has been discussed, in conclusion, existentialism has significantly influenced modern thought. Its strengths lie in its focus on self-determination and authenticity, which have inspired fields like literature and psychology and many more. However, it's not without challenges. Denying inherent meaning in life can lead to nihilism or moral relativism, creating a sense of hopelessness or ethical uncertainty. In comparing this to Islamic worldview, the differences are very striking. Existentialism values personal freedom and sees death as a motivator for living authentically. Meanwhile, in Islam, it ties purpose to obedience to Allah and views death as the transition to eternal life, providing hope and accountability. So basically, it is a call for balance between existentialism and Islam. Too much freedom is not good, but freedom is indeed a need in life.
The A to Z of isms, existentialism. There they are, the quintessential existentialists, lounging in a Parisian left bank cafe, discussing the meaninglessness of life. There is some truth behind every detail of this stereotype, but in its totality, it's a misleading caricature. It owes much to Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, both philosophers, writers and famous public intellectuals in France from the Second World War until Sartre's death in 1980. Sartre argued that the fundamental principle of existentialism is that existence precedes essence. In other words, we have to create our own lives, our own selves, our own values. God does not exist. We are born without a destiny. It's all up to us. We are therefore condemned to be free. Condemned because our freedom is far from that of the carefree hedonistic consumer on a shopping spree. We have an absolute responsibility for ourselves, which can lead to despair and anguish, even questioning the point of living, the classic existential crisis. This existential angst has not gone away. It's the human condition, as real today as ever. Political freedom and material prosperity end the struggle for basic existence and survival, but only increase the struggle to find genuine meaning for our existence. Why are we here? How can we make a difference? How should we really live? Sartre took our freedom as given, but his partner and fellow philosopher Simone de Beauvoir pointed out that it's not always that simple. In her seminal book The Second Sex, she argued that society and political structures often conspire to hold women back. Camus argued that yes, we are free, but the world itself is absurd. He retold the classical myth of Sisyphus, condemned forever to push a rock up a hill, only to see it roll back down, for him to start all over again. Like Sisyphus, our task is to accept our own absurd lives cheerfully. Wonderful though life can be, it has no ultimate purpose, and we all end as dust. However, not all existentialists believe we live in a godless, senseless universe. The father of existentialism, the 19th century Dane Søren Kierkegaard, believed in the Christian God, but argued reason and evidence can never prove that he exists. We have to take a non-rational leap of faith. At its heart then, existentialism is not really all about meaninglessness. It's about the responsibility we all have to make the right choices in life, both for ourselves and for others. A heavy responsibility indeed, and just as important now as in post-war Paris.
I can't believe how Truman never realized everything in his life was fake. Like, he's been living in this massive TV set without knowing. What's that? Some kind of new reality show or something? No, it's a Truman Show. It's this movie about a guy whose life is a scripted show. He doesn't even know it though.
Wait, his whole life is scripted? That's crazy. What's happened when he finds out?
No, he doesn't know. At least not at first. But then it gets interesting because he starts to question his life. Like, what's actually real?
That sounds like existential crisis waiting to happen. It's all about questioning reality, isn't it? Like, do we really control our own life, or is everything predetermined?
Yeah, it makes you think about freedom. Truman was free in a way, but only because he didn't know he was being controlled. But once he realized, he had to decide whether to break free or stay in his safe little world.
I guess the things about existentialism, right? Like Sartre said, we are condemned to be free. We don't have to blueprint or any preordained fate. So it's all about to us to give a life meaning. But there's a huge responsibility.
Exactly. It's all about owning your choices, but the downside is, if life has no inherent meaning, it can lead to nihilism. Like, if we are just making it up as we go, what's the point? Yeah, I think Truman went through that, right? Like, everything's fake and nothing is real. So he could just give up, but he didn't. He took that leap even though he had no idea what was on the other side. Speaking of that, doesn't it get a little hopeless? Like, if we just create our own values, how do we know if we are doing the right thing?
That's the big question. If there's no universal truth, then what's right or wrong become personal, which can be freeing but also kind of chaotic. Imagine if everyone just did whatever they right to them.
Right. And this brings us to another thing. Existentialism doesn't really give a lot of room, but forces spirituality or divine purpose. Like, if there's no inherent meaning in life, then is there a vital power guiding us?
Yeah, like in the Truman Show, Truman eventually faces the idea that there's a creator of his world, someone who set everything up. But in existentialism, it's like there's no divine director. You are on your own.
I get what you're saying, but I think existentialism is more about making your life meaningful, despite that. Like the idea of authenticity, living true to yourself, not to what others want or expect. Totally, it's about rejecting societal pressure and choosing your own path. But honestly, I'm not sure that will work for everyone. I mean, what about who needs some sense or structure of purpose, like religion?
Yeah, that's where existentialism and religion clash, right? In Islam, for example, freedom is about submission to Allah's will. It gives us the purpose that comes from outside in the individual, so you are not just making everything up.
Exactly. It's like in existentialism, you have to find meaning yourself. But in faith-based worldviews like Islam, you are given that meaning through submission. You know your purpose isn't just something you create, but it's part of something bigger.
That's true. But still, I think Truman's story highlights how we all face a choice. We can either accept that life we've been given or question it.
That's the thing about freedom though. It's not always easy and not everyone is ready for it. Sometimes, people would rather just stay in their comfortable bubble than face the chaos of freedom.
So, in the end, we are all trying to figure out what makes life meaningful, whether through self-determination or faith. Pretty deep for a movie about a guy in a reality show.
So basically, I think, from my favorite show, Truman Show, we can learn that existentialism gives people freedom. But then again, it contrasts with the Islamic teaching because we know that human intellect is impossible to be given too much freedom. Freedom is okay and important, but too much freedom is not.